coming through when the growth look good on you. Best believe they wanna screw now. I've been trying to climb, devil threw me in the dark. Baby, don't be insecure, you can still go make a mark like blow. Could never let them drain my soul now. Blow. Table turning like doorknobs, wow. Blow. I think I'm about to set sail. I'm a walking, living legend, walking with my chest out. Life keep dealing me cards, I keep fitting in.
Yes, people. It's G. You know what time it is. You know what it is. We are back in the building for today's round of 16 tie, England versus Senegal. Hey, it's going to be a crazy one, man. Hopefully, it's going to be a crazy one. Hopefully, this game follows on from everything we've seen, so far in the World Cup, currently in the group stages. Personally, for me, this has been, one of the better World Cups. But before we even get into all of that good stuff, as you guys can see, scrolled across the bottom, we are on the road to 150 subscribers. That is the target before the end of the World Cup. So guys, please, if you haven't subscribed already, if you haven't liked already, if you haven't shared already, please make sure you hit that button. So today's game is I hope anyway, and this is me to almost preempting something, but I don't know what it is I'm actually preempting. Hopefully it's a good game. Two very good teams, two very different style, of teams, as we'll get into, in a second. England finishing top of their group, ahead of the USA, Iran and Wales. Senegal finishing in second behind the Netherlands, pipping Ecuador to that second place position. So how do you guys see this? To be honest with you, for everyone who's tuning in, how do you guys view this kind of game? Do you think facing Senegal is going to be a tough proposition for England? Do you guys, kind of think that, England should kind of coast this kind of game? Me personally, I think facing a team like Senegal, England don't face many teams from the African continent, and I feel like when they come up against a team like Senegal, the kind of test that they're going to show, as I'll, kind of dive into, might cause them a few problems. It kind of also depends on whether or not England are going to be on their game. That's going to be very, very key. Certain players need to be on their game, need to be on guard, and just make sure that, they do their thing. If they do, then yeah, I can see a victory. But then I can also see the game going to, extra time, I believe, and then, penalties. So, Senegal are a difficult team. They really did battle in that group, and Netherlands and Ecuador, that was a tougher group than I thought. Obviously, taking out Qatar, that was a tougher group than I thought, to be honest with you. When I looked at it, it was one of those groups where, as we would say in like the Champions League or, in European competition, almost like the group of death. And the reason why I say that is because it was one of the groups of death. There was actually quite a few, to be fair, Japan, Spain, Germany, as we saw the other day. But it's one of those groups where you're like, you would expect Netherlands to go through, but that second position is Ecuador, Senegal. You don't really know. Either or can potentially go through. Didn't really obviously feel that Qatar were going to pose too much of a threat. But looking at those three, I was thinking, and we didn't really know how Netherlands were going to be able to kind of cope throughout this tournament. They, not to say they were coming in this tournament with bad form, but it's just, I feel like they haven't quite yet found their footing as it is in this tournament, but they're getting the wins. Gakpo's obviously on form, and et cetera, et cetera. So it was kind of a catch-22. That plus, as I say, the Germany group, and maybe looking at the Morocco group as well. But when we're talking about Senegal, African champions and all of that, take a look here. So I've got Senegal versus Holland. So this is their first game. So this is how Senegal kind of lined up in that game. So 4-3-3, same as England, right? They do the same things as you would kind of maybe expect. And obviously they're coming up against a team like Netherlands. So I've got up, you're going to see I've got them up against Senegal, against Ecuador, and against Qatar, and how they actually lined up against those teams. And the reason why I've got this up is because each team was a different level for Senegal, and with each team they kind of did play different formations, which might actually make it a bit more trickier for England in regards to how they may or may not play. Now, this is how they set up more or less against the Netherlands, who played a 5-3-2 formation, or 3-5-2, however you kind of view it. But when they played against them, they did have Gay, who was in the middle. He was kind of the, I don't even want to say he was the deeper out of the three, to be honest with you, because he did find himself in attacking areas. But maybe he was the one I would say is the box to box out of the three, Keate and Mendy, in that middle of the park. And, they've got a solid, centre back pairing in Koulibaly and Cisse. But when I'm looking at that midfield, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, they come up against Bergwijn, De Jong, and Gakpo, who isn't really a central midfielder. He kind of filled in, on the left-hand side. But when they're coming up against that kind of threat, so to speak, they're going to try and keep it compact. You're not going to see them maybe venturing as much as they did. Their outlets are going to be players like Dia and Sarr. Those two will be the problems for England, and obviously that's why my lineup will be what it is when you see it. When I'm thinking of Senegal, for them personally, it's tricky. It is very, very tricky. When I was thinking about this preview, and I was getting the stats and everything up, I was sitting there thinking, I don't really know how they're planning on really setting up against an England, because I don't know how they look at England. Do you get what I mean? I don't know how they view England in terms of their threats and things like that. But this is obviously just how they set up against a higher ranking team, a very, very good team with very, very good players. So I feel that this is maybe a way that they could potentially go. Then you've got their lineup against Qatar, obviously against a team who are the lowest ranked team in that group. And when they're coming up against a team like Qatar, they feel like they can express themselves a lot more. Now you're seeing Sarr on the right-hand side of the midfield with Dia up front with Diadio. Like, it's then a whole different type of setup, a lot more attacking. They feel like they can be on the front foot a lot more, only have the two in midfield because they feel that they can still control the game with those two there. So it's then not really a problem if they then concede possession, so to speak, in the middle of the park, because they trust that Qatar are not going to be able to pose them, a lot of threats. And then you move on to Ecuador, who I felt would have been the most evenly matched kind of game. And again, they've gone with a 4-3-3. And as you can see, as I said before, with Gay against Holland, never felt that he was the deeper out of the three. They've gone with 4-3-3 again, but with a deeper one player who sits in that DM position. And it wasn't Gay, as Gay was playing on the right-hand side of the midfield, almost that Jordan Henderson, famous role. And the way they set up there, it did allow for them to be able to get forward, and it gave players like Sarr and Dia and Ndiaye a lot of space. But what you then started to see happening is Ecuador were having chances. Ecuador were getting on the ball and were able to push forward quite a bit. So they were almost conceding possession in the middle of the park, but because they knew they had the outlets, as you saw with that game, anybody who watched the Ecuador versus Senegal game, it was end to end. It was almost like a basketball match, at points in the game, until, Senegal kind of clinched it for themselves, but, Koulibaly and Sarr obviously getting the goals, but that was more of an end to end. But I felt like the reason they've done that is purely because they know they're coming up against a team who are quite evenly matched, so to speak, if we're then looking at it in terms of the other opposition they've had to face, in that group. So that's why I'm a little bit like, how are they going to do? How they're going to play. And one of their key players, obviously, is Mela Sarr, the Watford winger / striker. He's been touted by quite a few teams, around Europe. I know of quite a few Premier League teams who were credited with an interest when Watford were going down. He decided to stay, and, I'm assuming just help Watford, potentially get back in, to the Premier League. And I'm looking at his positioning. Now, this is his positioning against Holland, and I'm going to use Holland as the kind of marker in terms of as the reference point, should I say, because they're a higher ranking, better quality team. And obviously they're coming up against an England who have similar qualities in that. So I feel they're going to go with 4-3-3 like they did, against Holland. And when you look at the positioning of Ismail Assar, you can see he likes to hang out there on the left, but in that left midfield, not even really left wing. Yes, left wing, I guess, when he's been thread a through ball or something like that. But you can see that's his main kind of role. And obviously he will then, if Dia's obviously playing, then he'll try and link up with Dia quite a lot. Taking a look at my lineup, I've got Kyle Walker at the back here. And, as you can see, I've changed a little bit. So I've got Marcus Rashford coming in. Phil Foden, I still think should be playing in that 10 because I believe that he can almost rotate and swap with a Harry Kane, potentially get beyond Harry Kane. And if Rashford does then come inside, he can then shift out to the left-hand side and Rice and Bellingham. I know a lot of people talk about Henderson and things like that. I don't feel like Henderson will be able to play in a game of this level of intensity. In the middle of the park, there's going to be a lot more energetic players in there, and I just don't feel like he's going to be able to match them up in that middle of the park. But maybe as the game kind of progresses, if Bellingham or Rice, look like they're getting tired and they can't handle it, or Foden is having a stinker, for example, you can still bring on Jordan Henderson to kind of help to stem the tide, if there is one, obviously, in this game. But obviously, in regards to Ismail Assar, I've got Kyle Walker down that side. You're going to need someone fast. You're going to need someone with pace. England don't really have that at right back other than Kyle Walker. Trent and Trippier are not very quick. They will get burnt completely by someone like Sarr, especially the reason why I've gone with a Walker as opposed to, I don't know the situation, obviously, with Ben White and things like that. So I've chosen Walker instead. The reason why I've gone with him over a Trent or a Trippier is that I feel like with Walker and Trippier, I feel like they're probably like the same level in terms of like defensive capabilities. He'll just be able to handle a Sarr a lot better, I feel. Trippier, again, will get done just purely just with pace, unless England are able to... If he does play Henderson there, then maybe that might actually help. So this could actually be something that, Gareth Southgate is thinking about. And I'm actually thinking about this, on the spot as I'm speaking now. This might be something that Southgate might want to think, maybe we do get a Henderson in there. Someone who can play on that right central midfield position to be able to help the right back out. Because they're going to need help with someone like Ismail Assar. I feel like they're going to try and use Sarr as the main creative outlet, the main outlet in a general sense, almost the focal point, of their attack, whilst the other players who are in and around them, like Dia, can kind of feed off of them, because of his pace. He's a decent finisher as well, and he's definitely a threat. So England are going to have to make sure. So maybe he might be looking at playing a Jordan Henderson, in that position. I don't know. But when I do look at that, I think it depends on how you want to go. If you're that worried, you're going to play with Jordan Henderson. If you're not that worried and you're confident in, the team's abilities, I feel like you can still go 4-2-3-1, and, you're just going to have to ask Saka to potentially drop a little bit more than he would probably like to. But it's not something that he doesn't know, how to kind of do. He's done it before, so why can't, he do it again to be able to help the team? So he might not be that effective, but he's going to be helping in the bigger picture, in the grand scheme of things, should I say. So that's where I feel that right back slot, Kyle Walker will probably be best served to come up against someone like, an Ismail Assar. And when you look at, Dia's positioning against Holland, you can see he's someone who likes to float around quite a bit, but he's also got the pace, the power, and the strength to be able to hurt England at the back there. Now, we talk about, Harry Maguire, and to be honest, I feel like now, he's in this tournament anyway, and we can only speak of what's happening now. There's no point going on about before. In this tournament, he's played fairly well. He has played fair. He's been one of England's better performers, if I'm being super honest with you. So he's going to be someone that maybe D is looking at to kind of stay on that last shoulder, try and bully him in, at the back there. But, if Maguire's up to it, I feel like Maguire could win that battle. It will be a problem, obviously, with the pace. And this is where England are going to have to be careful in the middle of the park to cut off those passing lanes, to be able to cut off those spaces, in behind, and just make sure that they're all switched on. As long as there's communication, as I said before, in England's previous game against Wales, yes, Wales are of lesser quality, but they have players who can pose you a threat if you're not on the ball. So England just need to make sure that they're on the ball enough, and I feel like they'd be able to, be able to at least handle someone like like a Diop. And again, looking at my lineup again, I just feel it is tricky because he played the 4-3-3 kind of a flat 4-3-3. If I'm being honest, maybe Declan Rice was maybe the deepest, out of the three. But I just feel that England can take the game to Senegal. England can take the game to Senegal. They are good, but if you've got someone, especially someone like a Koulibaly at the back, who's obviously going to play barring injury, if you've got someone like that at the back, one of the main things you're going to know is he's got pace, he's got power, he's got the strength, and he's pretty decent in terms of actually being a defender. So with someone like him, someone say like a Foden or a Rashford, what they need to be able to try and do, if they obviously play, is play in the spaces. Don't worry about trying to almost, get up against him. I don't think we're going to see Harry Kane, as we saw in the Wales game. He dropped deep quite a lot in that game. He was dropping deep, trying to find spaces for Rashford, for Phil Foden, who was playing on the right-hand side in that game. I feel like this will be a game where you're going to see Kane do the same thing. He's not going to want to stick on someone like a Koulibaly or the other centre-back, whoever that might be. He's not going to stick them there. He's not going to stick there because it doesn't really benefit him. He'll get out-muscled. It will just be one of those long games for him. And then he'll end up just being out of the game just because. And then, it causes its own problems. And if Harry Kane is out of the game, England's attack does not work. Hence the reason why I am looking at potentially a Foden in behind him, because I feel that if Harry Kane does get, kind of marked out of this game or anything like that, I believe Foden can then be your next point of reference. He can be the next player who's almost in charge of that attack, where he can release a Rashford, he can release a Saka, he can do 1-2s with a Harry Kane. If Harry Kane's got to play a game where he has to maybe stick on a Koulibaly, which then allows for the others to have a lot more freedom and a lot more space in and around, then that's just what he's going to have to do. It's for the greater good, as they say. So that for me, I don't think Kane would even have a real issue with something like that. As we've seen, he's not scoring goals here. He's not bothered about that. As long as England are winning, as long as, he's helping out in the attack, and he is, and obviously Kane is the glue to this attack, then it's not going to be too much of an issue. I don't personally think. Again, as much as I'm saying all of these tactics and, England, I want England to play like this, this is just my personal lineup. As we've seen with Gareth Southgate, he's got his way of playing, and his way of playing, inevitably it's doing well. Do you know what I mean? It's doing well. It is getting England through these games. It might not be in a manner that we like to see it, but it is getting England through these games. So he's going to want to stick with most of that, throughout the tournament. I have an inkling that Henderson might play, obviously at the time of, recording this, which is obviously going to be a day or two, out. I actually just don't know. I genuinely don't know. I think he's given himself a problem that he would love to have. At the end of the day, of course, you'd want to have that issue. Who should I play? What should I do in terms of formation wise? This player's playing well, that player's playing well. So of course, you're going to want to put yourself, in those kind of positions moving forward. And I totally understand that. And that's absolutely fine. I just think that if England come up against, and if I put it up here again, if England come up against, let's say Senegal go with that midfield. In fact, let's say they go with that team, to be honest with you, which they could potentially do. But especially the midfield and the attack. England are going to need to make sure that Rice and Bellingham, because they're going to be the two who are inevitably going to start, Rice and Bellingham are going to need to make sure that they are switched on. Against the USA, it was kind of all over the gaff. And that kind of worries me. Obviously, Senegal don't possess those same quality of players in Tyler Adams, McKennie, and Musa, but they do have the energy. They have the energy in that midfield, and that energy could be a problem for England. That's where I feel he might want to have a more defensive-minded player, i.e. a Jordan Henderson, to be able to slot in there. I don't feel like Mount would play, but then again, Mount is a very energetic player. So, you know, it's can he be, you know, can he be organized enough? You know, can he be disciplined enough to play in that midfield and still obviously be able to help, you know, in attack? I feel like Gareth Southgate is going to be quite pragmatic in his approach for the first half anyway, and then he'll kind of see how the game pans out. You know, what the weak areas of Senegal is, what the weak areas of England is. You know, during the game as the game is kind of going on. So it's going to be kind of a bit of a to and fro. But yeah, for me, the game is going to be won and lost in that midfield. I think Senegal are good, generally just going to hold it tight there, you know, in that middle of the park. They're going to want to potentially sit deep and just hit England on the counter. And they've got the pace. That's one thing that they've got. They've got the pace and they've got finishers. They've got players who can put the ball in the back of the net. USA didn't really have that. You know, USA, the build-up play and everything was all good, but they just didn't have the finisher. They didn't really have that player that you thought, yeah, he can get you goals. You know, for me, it's Sarr. Sarr's the guy who can get you the goal. Sarr's the guy who can run in behind. Sarr's the guy who will win a penalty. You know, as he did against, you know, he scored the penalty, should I say, against Ecuador. But he's the guy, the danger man. I think if you quieten him down and you make sure, as I said, you cut the passing lanes, you make sure that there isn't that space in the middle of the park. So Rice and Bellingham are going to have to, I don't want to say get touch tight, but they're going to have to be as close as kind of possible to the midfield of Senegal. Then it will help. It will definitely help. You're gonna and Harry Kane. This is probably the one game where Harry Kane potentially dropping deep might actually be a good thing, because if he can slot into that midfield and almost just make it a bit more compact. If you do have a Foden in there, that's the runner. But then again, if he doesn't have a Foden in there and he does go with a flat 4-3-3, he's still going to have Rashford, Sterling, Saka, or Foden on that side, Grealish potentially. He's got the width to be able to do it. Use it in this game. Use it. Let it almost be defense and attack. Midfield kind of between the, obviously, like how it is obviously in the position. But what I mean by that is I don't necessarily want to see Luke Shaw or whoever plays at right back. I don't want to see them so high up the pitch, because if they're so high up the pitch, you cannot leave these guys with space. You cannot do that. They will hurt you with that space. England are not a fast team in terms of the defense anyway. Attack, yeah, they've got very, very quick players. In defense, they're not quick. You know, Rice is reasonably quick. Bellingham is reasonably quick. But in terms of in that transition, Sarr is quicker than all of them. You know, he'll burn all of them if given the time and if given the space. So if he is given that time and space, it could then end up being a problem. Dia, the same thing. He's quick. I'm not going to say he's quicker than all of them, because I don't really know too much. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. But Sarr definitely is, and Dia will give all of them a very, very good foot race. Don't have your fullback so high up. We don't need them so high up. When Trent Alexander-Arnold came on against Wales, he had that position where he barely even crossed the halfway line. Have them there. Have them there. Have England's attack do the attacking, with Harry Kane dropping in deep, collecting the ball wherever he needs to collect the ball, and then they can move forward, because then it at least then makes us a little bit more solid in that middle of the park, and also in those wide areas where if we do lose the ball, we're good to go. Because if we lose the ball, obviously, when there's no one there, it then creates more problems. And, you know, Sarr and whoever plays on that, you know, right-hand side, or whichever side Sarr plays, whoever plays on the opposite side, they're going to want to push wide. They're going to want to push wide to leave that space through the middle. So we just need to be a little bit careful, you know, in regards to that. But yeah, I think going to be a tricky game. Honestly, I couldn't even predict it, if I'm being honest with you. I honestly don't know which way this is going to go. I think it's going to be a tougher test for England than most people think. But at the same time, if England do put in a, you know, resounding, fantastic performance, it sets them up moving forward, quarterfinals, semi-finals, and then a potential final. So, you know, this is where England are going to need to show everybody, okay, we are serious. You know, we are serious. I mean, I have to congratulate Senegal regardless. You know, no Mane, and that was a big, big miss, you know, for them. And they could have probably done with him, you know, in this side. But, you know, they've done well. They've done really well. They've had a great year, to be honest with you. You know, they've had a really, really, really good year, you know, 2022. So the fact that they've got to this round of 16, they're going to want to try and push on. They're going to want to try and fight for the African teams. They're going to want to try and put Africa a bit more on the map, so to speak. So, this isn't a game that England can try and take lightly. England do have their threats. As I say, in attack, that's where I think England obviously will win the game, but they need to make sure that they remain solid. Hence the reason why I believe, Gareth Southgate is going to go, a little bit more pragmatic than anything. Just because of that, he's going to feel maybe like this is the case where, I'd rather go safe as opposed to trying to, go out on the attack, just because he might be a little bit worried with what Senegal may or may not possess. But we'll wait and see, guys. I am sitting on the fence with this, if I'm being honest with you. I'm not really, I just don't know which way this is going to go, because I don't know which team is going to actually turn up. We've seen in this tournament has been crazy. And that's one thing I wanted to definitely say was, for me, this has been one of the best World Cups I've ever watched. I would say I started watching the World Cup 1998 was my first World Cup. After that, then, but I was quite young. 2002 would have been my next World Cup that I would have seen and really understood a lot more about the game, seen a lot more of the players, on show, especially like obviously the Brazilian players. Was it the 2006 World Cup? Thought that was a okay World Cup. Yeah, okay. 2010, 14, 18. I feel like they all kind of meshed together, to be honest with you. They were good World Cups. I'm not going to say that, they weren't decent. They had their moments. But let's put it to you this way then. In terms of the group stages, for me, this is the best World Cup I've ever seen, 100%, hands down. I can't remember a group stage being as exciting as this. I can't remember, a lot of people have spoken, which has irked me a little bit. A lot of people speak about the quality of, this World Cup. Some people saying it's not that good, and stuff like that. And, it, for me, again, my opinion, everyone's obviously entitled to their own. For me, people say I'm a negative Nelly, but then it just, when people say things like this, it shows me that any people just want to moan about something. So they're going to try and pick something out to moan about, we've never ever had the so-called lesser teams or lesser nations. We've never had them at a level where they've been able to fairly compete with a lot of these other top nations. So we wouldn't have seen a Japan necessarily go through in a group full of Germany and Spain. We would never have seen a Morocco top their group ahead of a Belgium and a Croatia. These kind of things, we would never in any lifetime seen Saudi Arabia beat Argentina and have it go down to the last game. There's so many different good, so many good things. We're in a, again, as I say, like we're in a time now where the smaller nations have upped their quality. The top nations have still got the same quality as they've always had. Whether you think, yeah, this team is that every team in every generation has had their kind of different parts. The quality is kind of, yes, in some teams it's maybe a bit better, in other teams it's maybe a bit worse. For example, Belgium's quality was never there before. Now, if you look at the Belgium team, their quality in the team in terms of the personnel that they have is obviously a lot better than, say, 1998 or 2002, for example. So I'm looking at the quality of the top teams. It's still up there. It's still the kind of same. They still have the top players. They still have, the better players play in the better leagues and things like that, But when I'm looking at the smaller teams, they've also got better players. A lot of the smaller nations, some of their players play in the top European leagues. Some play in the Premier League, La Liga, Ligue 1, Serie A, Bundesliga. They play in these leagues. So if they're playing in these leagues, inevitably they're going to catch up with a lot of these, so-called top nations. Hence the reason why we look at a Morocco and Belgium, little Morocco versus Belgium. And to be honest with you, yes, on paper, you'd think, yeah, maybe Belgium should go out there and, completely blitz that group, or at least, qualify at the bare minimum out of that group. But when you're looking at Morocco, when you're looking at the way that they play, managers are getting a lot better. Managers are coaching these smaller teams a lot better, how to utilize what they do best. They're able to do this. Players like Hakimi, Ziyech, these are fantastic players playing in good leagues, fantastic players in their own right. So you know, that quality inevitably is going to creep up. And now for me, we've just got it on a bit more of an like before it was, this used to be the quality, you know, of, you know, the top teams, and the bottom teams were literally not even in shot. It used to be here. Now we're getting to here now. We're getting there, which makes it for a far more exciting, you know, World Cup. You know, I don't understand how anyone is excited by watching a Brazil team just go out there and spank it all the time, or Germany, or the same old things from Spain. Like, it's boring. That is very boring for viewership. You know, I don't want to see that. You know, that's not why I watch football. I watch football for the excitement, you know, the adrenaline and things like that. So when I'm watching, you know, this World Cup, it's giving you all of that. Every game almost, you know, from match day 1 to match day 3, every single day of the World Cup has been exciting. Whether it's been one match, whether it's been all 4 games, you know. So, you know, as I say, man, like those other negative Nellies out there, they just need to just enjoy the football. I personally hope that we have another World Cup mid-season. I think it adds to the excitement, and it adds to what's actually, you know, going on at the moment. Players are actually in a level of form. They're in, you know, they're match sharp. You know, when you're at the end of the season, you're not match sharp. You're tired, you're lethargic, you're lackluster. You know, it's very difficult for teams to get themselves up again for another month. You know, it for me, I'm really liking the fact that we have this tournament, you know, in the middle of the season. I would love for there to be another tournament mid-season. I think that's not the way to go, because of course, you know, we're going to go back to, you know, normality, especially like with the next World Cup and things like that. But it's definitely something I would love to see, and I think we will see it, to be honest with you. You know, every continent is going to have their, you know, or should have their, you know, World Cup hosted there. And yeah, I personally think that moving forward, it's going to be a discussion. You know, I think a lot more people, you know, this is for the actual people who are there, you know, and speaking to people who are actually there, not the media and, you know, the propaganda, the agendas that we're seeing, you know, online and, you know, things like that. I think when you're actually there speaking to people, the atmosphere, it's still the same. You know, it would be the same if it was here, but it's not. It's in another, you know, another part of the world. Hence the reason why people don't feel like they're in the World Cup mood, when the reality is, you know, get in the mood. You know what I mean? It's like, get in the mood. Why wouldn't you be in the mood for a World Cup? That's very weird. You know, again, agendas will always, you know, push ahead, because that's just what people, that's just how people feel. And, you know, people are allowed to feel how they want to feel. But, you know, for me personally, as I said, and quite a lot of people that I've spoken to, people who are even out there, they've said that this is one of the best World Cups, you know, that they've been able to watch. You know, so long may it continue. Long may it continue. But guys, that's my preview done and dusted. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think the score is going to be? Do you think England can do it, or will there be a shock victory for Senegal? I'll be back again. You guys will probably catch me this on the evening, just after the game, on the Jerry James show. So make sure you tune in. We'll be doing a roundup of the round of 16 matches on the Sunday. And yeah, as I always like to say, man, stay blessed, everyone stay humble, and outie.